What if baby Bulla met Kid Vegeta? Chapter 1. The Royal Tantrum Across Time. The red skies of Planet Vegeta hovered dark and heavy over the royal training grounds. 10-year-old Prince Vegeta wiped a trickle of sweat from his forehead, his Saiyan tail flicking in irritation. He had just decimated 3 elite battle simulators, yet his father, King Vegeta, was still demanding higher power outputs to appease Lord Frieza. Weaklings, the lot of them, young Vegeta muttered, crossing his arms and scowling at the smoking craters. Before he could resume his training, a localized rift tore through the atmosphere directly above the courtyard. Crackling with violent purple temporal lightning, the anomaly split open with a sound like shattering glass. Crash! A spherical capsule pod, sleeker and far more advanced than anything constructed by the Saiyan army, tumbled out of the rift and slammed hard into the concrete floor. Vegeta immediately dropped into a low stance, his hand charging a crackling ki blast. Who dares intrude on the prince's grounds? The pod's reinforced glass hatch hissed, sliding upward to reveal a bundle of soft pink blankets. Vegeta blinked, dropping his ki blast slightly. He approached cautiously, his scouter flicking on to scan the pod's contents. Scouter readout, power level, 15. Fluctuating. 800. Fluctuating. 2500. What is this broken piece of junk reading? Vegeta muttered, tapping the side of his scouter in disbelief. A power level spiking to 2500 in a newborn was unheard of, even legendary. He leaned over the rim of the pod. Sitting inside, chewing happily on a plush capsule corp dinosaur, was a baby girl with bright turquoise hair and big blue eyes. The baby looked up at the tiny, angry prince. Instead of crying at his stern expression, her eyes lit up with instant recognition. Dada, she giggled, reaching out 2 chubby hands. Vegeta recoiled as if stung. Dada, he spat, his face flushing with rage. I am Prince Vegeta, the pinnacle of the Saiyan race. I am no one's, Dada, you insolent parasite. Unbothered by his yelling, baby Bulla giggled harder. With a sudden burst of surprising speed, she floated straight out of the pod, without scouter-detectable thrusters, and floated right up to Vegeta's face. Before the young prince could react, she grabbed a huge handful of his spiky black hair and yanked it with absurd, half-Saiyan strength. Gah, let go, you brat! Vegeta yelled, struggling to pry her tiny fingers off his scalp. I am the future ruler of all Saiyans. Respect your prince. Bulla simply sneezed, sending a tiny shockwave of raw ki off her body that blasted young Vegeta backward onto his tail. Sitting in the dust, disheveled and shocked, Prince Vegeta stared at the baby who was now floating upside down, laughing hysterically. She transformed her ki naturally without training, Vegeta whispered, his eyes wide. He rubbed his sore scalp, a strange, unprecedented grin creeping onto his face. Who are you, girl? And where did you come from? From the corridor behind them, heavy footsteps echoed. King Vegeta was approaching to inspect the commotion. Young Vegeta looked at the doorway, then back at the floating blue-haired baby. If his father or Frieza's scouts saw a child with blue hair and this kind of unnatural latent power, she'd be sent away, or worse. TCH. Get down here, Vegeta growled quietly, grabbing her blanket and pulling her behind his chest armor just as the heavy iron doors swung open. Chapter 2. The Royal Deception. The heavy iron doors of the royal training grounds hissed open. King Vegeta stepped into the courtyard, his red cape billowing behind him, flanked by 2 elite Saiyan guards. His eyes narrowed instantly as he surveyed the smoking craters, the shattered time pod, and his son sitting on the ground covered in dust. Vegeta, the king barked, his voice booming across the arena. What was that temporal energy signature? Our scouters picked up a spatial anomaly directly over the palace. Prince Vegeta scrambled to his feet, tucking the small, blanket-wrapped bundle tightly against his side, hiding her completely behind his chest armor and high shoulder pads. Don't make a sound, you little brat, Vegeta thought fiercely, squeezing his eyes shut for a brief second. To his horror, Bulla didn't take kindly to being squeezed. She squirted out from under his arm like an oiled eel, popping her head right over his left shoulder pad. She stared curiously at the giant, bearded Saiyan king. Well, King Vegeta demanded, stepping closer. And what is that wreckage? An experimental capsule pod, father. Young Vegeta blurted out, forcing his body into a stiff, formal salute, a motion specifically calculated to block his father's view of Bulla with his raised elbow. I was testing a high-yield ki explosion to push my limits. The debris you see is simply the casing of the target pod destroyed in the blast. King Vegeta stopped 5 feet away, crossing his arms. And the spatial rift, a byproduct of my overwhelming power, young Vegeta said without missing a beat, trying to project total Saiyan arrogance while secretly using his tail to pat Bulla's foot so she wouldn't giggle. The king stared at his son, unimpressed. Suddenly, one of the elite guards stepped forward, staring at his scouter. Your Majesty, my scouter is registering a second power signature right next to the prince, the guard muttered, tapping his visor. It's small, but... wait. It just jumped from 10 to 1,200. What? King Vegeta's eyes flared. Vegeta, what are you hiding behind your back? Bulla, delighted by all the loud shouting, let out a high-pitched, enthusiastic string of baby babble, da-da-ba-ba-ba. King Vegeta froze. The guards froze. Young Vegeta's face went completely red. He slowly lowered his arm, revealing the baby girl tucked against his hip. Bulla waved her tiny chubby hand at the king of all Saiyans. Is that a baby? King Vegeta whispered, his brow furrowing in deep confusion. He leaned down, staring at the child. With blue hair, what manner of mutant Saiyan creature is this? She is not a mutant. Vegeta snapped instinctively, surprising even himself. He took a protective step back. She came from the pod, father. Her latent power level spiked over 2,000 moments ago. 2,000? King Vegeta's face darkened. A baby with a power level rivaling, or exceeding, his own son's birthright was a threat. Worse, if Lord Frieza found out about a newborn with that kind of power, he would either take her or destroy Planet Vegeta out of paranoia. A child with blue hair and anomalous power is an abomination to the royal bloodline, King Vegeta declared coldly, reaching for his waist holster. Hand her over. She will be disposed of before Frieza's reconnaissance team arrives. Vegeta's heart hammered against his ribs. Saiyans didn't care for sentimentality. Weakness was purged. But looking down at the baby, who was currently trying to eat the cape clasp on his armor, he felt a surge of pure, unadulterated pride. She had his stubbornness. She had his latent fire. No, young Vegeta said, his voice quiet but deadly sharp. King Vegeta paused, his hand hovering over his blaster. What did you say? I said no, the young prince hissed, dropping into a fighting stance, shielding Bulla behind his body. She appeared on my training grounds. By Saiyan law, she is my responsibility, and my property. If anyone disposes of her, it will be when I decide she is no longer useful. King Vegeta stared at his 10-year-old heir, tension thick enough to cut with a blade hanging in the air. Suddenly, the king let out a low, booming laugh. HMPH. So you dare defy your king for a high-power subordinate? Good, that is how a true Saiyan prince speaks. The king turned his back, waving a dismissive hand. Keep her hidden in your quarters. If Lord Frieza's scouts catch sight of a blue-haired baby with a power level of 2,000, I will execute her myself, and hold you accountable. Am I clear? Crystal, father, Vegeta growled. As the king and his guards marched away, young Vegeta let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 10 minutes. He looked down at Bulla, who was now fast asleep, drooling softly onto his pristine white battle armor glove. You're nothing but trouble, brat, Vegeta muttered under his breath, carefully adjusting her blanket as he turned toward the royal living quarters. Tomorrow, training begins. Chapter 3, Rations, Rage, and Rattle Shifting. The royal quarters were designed for warriors, not infants. Concrete floors, cold stone walls, and racks of blasters and bladed weapons left little room for childproofing. Prince Vegeta paced across his private chambers, his hands clamped on his hips, glaring at the blue-haired toddler sitting in the center of his massive, animal pelt bed. Listen to me, female, Vegeta commanded, pointing a stern finger at her. In this palace, we survive through strength. We do not cry, we do not soft-soak, and we certainly do not drool on the royal furs. Bulla blinked her bright blue eyes, giggled, and shoved a fist into her mouth. TCH. Vegeta sighed, rubbing his temples. First order of business, sustenance. He marched over to his personal storage chest and yanked open a crate of standard Saiyan military rations, dense, bitter paste tubes designed to sustain elite shock troops on long space voyages. He ripped open a package and offered a gloved finger covered in grey nutrient slop to the baby. Eat. It contains 3,000 calories of compressed meat protein. Bulla leaned forward, sniffed the grey sludge, and instantly wrinkled her tiny nose in disgust. With a sharp flick of her hand, she slapped Vegeta's arm away. Slap! The force of the hit rattled Vegeta's wrist. The paste flew across the room, splattering directly against a portrait of King Vegeta hanging on the far wall. "You insolent little," Vegeta roared, his hair flaring slightly with ki. "That is royal sustenance. You will eat it and like it." Bulla's lower lip began to quiver. Her blue eyes filled with fat tears, and her power level suddenly surged. Scouter readout, power level, 300. 1500. 4200. Wait, no, don't. Vegeta panicked, waving his hands frantically. Bulla let out a high-pitched, supersonic wail. Boom! A shockwave of raw, untrained hybrid Saiyan ki detonated outward. The blast blew the heavy iron window shutters completely off their hinges, sending them plummeting 3 stories down into the courtyard below. The stone walls cracked, and half of Vegeta's armor rack collapsed into a heap of twisted metal. Vegeta lunged forward, diving across the bed to smother her with a pillow before the noise alerted the entire palace guard. "Quiet, quiet, you monster," Vegeta hissed, holding his hands over her mouth while desperately trying to keep his own power low so scouters wouldn't register the spike. "Fine, no meat paste. Just stop screaming." Bulla stopped wailing instantly, sniffling as her power dropped back to a harmless baseline. She pointed a tiny, chubby finger toward the window, looking outside with a hungry glare. Vegeta peeked through the shattered wall. In the courtyard below, 2 guards were roasting a massive 6-legged saurian beast over an open fire pit for the evening mess hall. "You've got to be joking," Vegeta muttered. "You're a baby." 10 minutes later, Prince Vegeta slipped back into his chambers through the broken window, carrying a steaming leg of beast meat half the size of his own body. He dropped the giant slab onto the bed. Bulla didn't hesitate. She grabbed the bone with both hands, unlocked her Saiyan jaws, and tore into the cooked meat with terrifying ferocity, devouring half the leg in under 20 seconds. Vegeta stared in absolute awe, his jaw hanging open. Remarkable. A true Saiyan appetite. After finishing her feast, Bulla let out a loud, satisfied burp, wiped her greasy face on Vegeta's clean white cape, and curled up into a ball on the pelt. Within moments, she was snoring softly. Vegeta sat on the edge of the bed, crossing his arms and looking down at the sleeping child. His room was half destroyed, his father's portrait was covered in grey sludge, and he had just committed treason by stealing from the mess hall, all for a blue-haired brat who wasn't even from this time. Yet, as he pulled the corner of his cape over her shoulders to keep her warm against the cold desert night air of Planet Vegeta, a smirk touched the prince's lips. 4200. Vegeta whispered to himself, his eyes glinting with ambition. "With power like that at your age, you'll make an exceptional general when I take the throne. Rest well, brat. Tomorrow, we test your combat potential." Chapter 4, The Secret Training Mission. The pale light of Planet Vegeta's 2 moons bathed the rocky wilderness of the Badlands in a harsh, cold glow. 10 miles outside the royal city, jagged cliffs and barren ravines stretched as far as the eye could see, the perfect place to train without the prying eyes of scouters or King Vegeta's spies. Prince Vegeta landed lightly atop a high stone pillar, his boots kicking up a cloud of red dust. Strapped securely to his chest in an improvised cloth harness was baby Bulla, her turquoise hair fluttering in the desert wind. She giggled, pointing at a pack of wild, saber-tooth-like beasts prowling the canyon floor below. "Pay attention, brat," Vegeta growled, tightening the harness. "This isn't a stroll through the gardens. Out here, strength is the only currency that matters." He leaped from the cliff face, descending like a meteor into the center of the canyon. The impact shattered the rock floor, sending a dozen terrifying beasts scattering in alarm. "Today, you learn the art of target acquisition," Vegeta announced, pointing toward the largest alpha beast, a hulking creature with obsidian armor plating and crimson eyes. "Watch carefully." Vegeta kicked off the ground, blurring with speed. In a fraction of a second, he landed a devastating palm strike directly under the beast's jaw, launching the massive creature 30 feet into the air. Before it could hit the ground, Vegeta extended his right hand, charging a vibrant purple energy sphere. "Gallic," Vegeta began, his brow furrowed with fierce intensity. Suddenly, a tiny chubby hand reached out from the harness and slapped directly over his open palm. Slap! Vegeta's ki charge fizzled out instantly. "What are you doing?" Vegeta yelled, looking down at Bulla. Bulla wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on the airborne beast. A brilliant violet aura, matching Vegeta's own energy, suddenly erupted around her tiny body, illuminating the entire canyon. Scouter readout, greater than power level, 2100. 3800. 5500. Wait, Bulla, hold on. Vegeta gasped, feeling the surge of raw energy rippling right next to his chest. With a high-pitched yell, Bulla threw both of her small hands forward. A miniature beam of crackling purple ki shot from her palms, streaking across the sky like a shooting star. The beam struck the monster dead-on, detonating in a massive explosion that wiped out the creature and vaporized the entire cliffside behind it. The shockwave blasted through the canyon, kicking up a gale force wind that flattened the surrounding rock formations. Silence fell over the scorched landscape. Floating debris rained down around him as the smoke slowly cleared, revealing a giant, glowing crater where the mountain used to be. Vegeta stood frozen in the center of the crater, his mouth agape, staring at the destruction. In his harness, Bulla let out a small yawn, rubbed her eyes with her fists, and resting her head against his armor, promptly fell back asleep as her aura faded away. Vegeta looked down at the sleeping baby, then back at the half-demolished mountain range. A slow, triumphant smile spread across his face, growing into a proud, boisterous laugh that echoed off the canyon walls. Ha! Unbelievable, Vegeta laughed, crossing his arms. An infant with the power to pulverize a cliffside in a single shot. You truly possess the blood of Royal Saiyan elite. He patted her blue hair gently, careful not to wake her. With power like this, Lord Frieza won't know what hit him when we take our rightful place, Vegeta whispered, turning back toward the palace. Come on, brat. Let's get you back before father notices the mountain missing. Chapter 5, The Scout Ship Incursion. The siren blew 3 short, deafening blasts across the royal capital. Prince Vegeta slid into his quarters through the shattered window frame, landing softly on the stone floor. He quickly unbuckled the harness, placing Bulla onto the center of his fur mattress just as the red warning lights along the corridor began to pulse. TCH. A Frieza Force scout vessel, Vegeta growled, peering out the window. A sleek, purple-trimmed reconnaissance shuttle was descending through the crimson clouds, settling onto the central landing pad of the palace. Out stepped 4 scouter-equipped soldiers, led by a high-ranking Frieza Force officer with pale green skin and a long, mechanical tail. Vegeta grabbed his white cape and draped it over Bulla, tucking her firmly under the heavy fabric. Listen to me, brat. Keep quiet. Frieza's men use high-frequency scouters that pick up even a heartbeat if you flex your ki. Bulla squirmed beneath the cape, letting out a faint, muffled whine. Before Vegeta could secure her further, his heavy oak door swung open without warning. King Vegeta stood in the doorway, flanked by his royal guards. Vegeta, Frieza's elite scout leader, Commander Apollo, has made an unannounced arrival, the king barked. They are running a mandatory power level audit of all royal warriors. Put on your scouter and meet us in the throne room immediately. The king's eyes flicked down toward the lump under the cape on Vegeta's bed. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing, turning on his heel and marching down the hallway. Understood, father, Vegeta called out, his pulse quickening. He turned back to the bed. Leaving Bulla alone in his room was suicide if scout teams swept the palace corridors. With a growl of frustration, Vegeta scooped her up, stuffing her inside his high-collared Saiyan battle armor chestpiece, zipping his heavy leather waist mantle over her legs to hold her snug against his ribs. The throne room, the palace grand hall was choked with tension. Dozens of Saiyan elite warriors stood in strict formation under the cold glare of Commander Apollo and his 3 scouts. Your Majesty, Apollo rasped, tapping his wrist-bound scouter console. Lord Frieza has noticed unusual temporal and energy fluctuations originating from this sector over the last 24 hours. We are here to inspect every life form on this rock. King Vegeta stood beside his throne, his hand gripping his cape tightly. Planet Vegeta is loyal to Lord Frieza. The energy readings were merely high-intensity training drills by my son. Is that so? Apollo smirked, turning toward young Prince Vegeta as he entered the hall. Ah, the young prince. Let us see how much your power has grown. Apollo raised his visor scouter and pressed the tracking button. Beep beep beep. Scouter readout, power level, 10,200. Apple's eyes widened in genuine surprise. 10,200, outstanding. At 10 years old, you are already approaching elite captain levels. Young Vegeta kept his expression impassive, though inside his chest, his heart was hammering against his ribs, partly from pride, but mostly because Bulla was currently squirming against his ribs, her tiny hand reaching up inside his chest plate to tweak his nose. "Stop it, you idiot," Vegeta thought fiercely, squeezing his shoulder blades together to pin her in place. Suddenly, Bulla's face hit the cold metal of his inner armor. Cold armor meant one thing to a baby: a sudden, unstoppable sneeze. Aachoo. A tiny burst of blue energy leaked through the seam of Vegeta's shoulder guard. Beep 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 crackle. Apple's scouter flared violently with red numbers, wildly recalculating. Scouter readout, power level, 10,200. 12,700. 15,400. What? Apple screamed, clutching his visor as it beeped in haywire overload. A power level of over 15,000 from a 10-year-old. That's impossible. The scouter is malfunctioning. No, Commander, one of the junior scouts gasped, looking at his own visor in terror. My scouter is reading two distinct key signatures occupying the exact same space. Apple's eyes locked onto Prince Vegeta's bulging chest armor. Prince Vegeta, what are you carrying under your armor? King Vegeta's hand slid quietly down toward his sidearm blaster. Prince Vegeta took a sharp step back, his teeth bared in a fierce, feral snarl as his own dark ki began to swirl around his boots. Touch me, young Vegeta whispered, his voice dripping with royal malice, and I will tear your head off before your scouter can register the stroke. Chapter 6. Stand at the Royal Palace. The throne room fell into a suffocating, razor-thin silence. Commander Apple stared in disbelief at Prince Vegeta's bulging battle armor, his scouter continuing to emit an erratic, high-pitched whining sound as it struggled to compute the double power signature. You're hiding something, Prince, Apple sneered, his hand dropping to the blaster holster on his hip. Lord Frieza strictly prohibited unauthorized bioentities on this planet. Guards, seize him. The three Frieza Force scouts lunged forward simultaneously, their scouter visors glowing as they charged energy blasts in their hands. Foolish worms, young Vegeta bellowed. Before the guards could take 2 steps, Vegeta exploded into motion. With Bulla strapped snugly against his chest beneath his chest plate, he ducked beneath the first scout's swipe, drove a ki-infused fist straight through the guard's sternum, and spun on his heel to fling the unconscious body directly into the second scout. Boom! The second scout smashed through the tall stained glass windows of the palace, plummeting toward the courtyards below. He's too fast. The third scout panicked, raising his arm cannon to fire point blank. Vegeta didn't even flinch. From inside his chest armor, a tiny chubby fist burst through the flexible side seal. Bulla, annoyed by the deafening noise, fired a concentrated beam of brilliant purple ki straight from her tiny knuckles. The blast engulfed the third scout, lifting him completely off his feet and blasting him out through the palace ceiling in a shower of stone and sparks. Scouter readout, greater than power level, 15,400. 18,000. Apple backed away in pure terror, his scouter cracking from the sheer heat radiating off the 10-year-old prince. You mutated demon child. Lord Frieza will wipe this entire filthy monkey race from the stars for this treason. Apple turned to flee toward the landing pad to alert Frieza's flagship. Father, don't let him reach his ship, Vegeta shouted, launching himself after the commander. King Vegeta didn't hesitate. Stepping forward with a cold smile, the Saiyan King raised his palm and fired a massive red execution beam that blew Apple through the palace doors and obliterated his reconnaissance shuttle on the landing pad in a towering pillar of fire. The remaining echoes of the explosion faded, leaving only the crackle of burning ship wreckage in the courtyard. Prince Vegeta landed lightly near his father, panting slightly. He unzipped his mantle and gently pulled Bulla out into the open air. The baby looked around at the burning ship, clapped her small hands together, and let out a delighted, squeaky laugh. King Vegeta walked over, standing tall above his son and the blue-haired child. He looked at the smoking ruin of the scout ship, then down at Bulla. Frieza will know of this soon enough, King Vegeta said quietly, his voice heavy with the gravity of what had just transpired. There is no turning back now, Vegeta. Let him come. Young Vegeta smirked, placing a hand on his hip while holding Bulla securely with his other arm. With this brat's power and mine, the Saiyan race won't be bowing to anyone much longer. Chapter 7. Clashing Timelines. The smoke from Apple's destroyed vessel still hovered over the royal landing pad when a sudden, sickening tear ripped through the sky. Unlike the unstable anomaly that dropped Bulla onto Planet Vegeta, this rift opened with surgical, mechanical precision. A sleek, ring-shaped temporal vessel glided through the portal, hovering effortlessly above the palace courtyard. The hatch hissed open, and two figures leaped down into the burning debris. Bulma, wearing high-tech tactical gear and a time-travel tracking visor, held a modified dragon radar in one hand and a heavy capsule blaster in the other. Beside her stood Future Vegeta, his classic dark blue bodysuit and white battle armor looking immaculate, his arms crossed over his chest with an air of absolute menace. "See, I told you," Bulma called out, waving her radar. "The localized Cronus particles led right here, Planet Vegeta, 30 years in the past." "TCH, I can feel it," Future Vegeta growled, his sharp eyes scanning the burning palace walls. "And her key is right in the middle of this mess." From the shattered throne room doors, 10-year-old Prince Vegeta stepped out onto the balcony, holding baby Bulla firmly under his arm. King Vegeta flanked him, his cloak blowing in the hot wind, his hand resting on his sidearm. The young prince's scouter went wild the moment his eyes landed on his future self. Scouter readout, power level, error. Overflow, system failure. The scouter on young Vegeta's face shattered into a dozen pieces, showering his cheek with tiny sparks. "What kind of power is that?" Young Vegeta gasped, gritting his teeth as the sheer pressure of Future Vegeta's dormant ki forced his knees to tremble. He looks like me. Who are you?" Future Vegeta ignored his younger self entirely. His eyes softened for a fraction of a second as they locked onto the blue-haired baby squirming in the young prince's grip. "Bulla," Future Vegeta said, his voice low and commanding. He stepped forward, the ground cracking under his boots. "Hand her over, boy. Boy," young Vegeta roared, his Saiyan pride flaring despite the terrifying aura before him. "I am the prince of all Saiyans. You don't command me, stranger." "Oh, brother," Bulma sighed, taking off her visor. She looked up at young Vegeta, then at King Vegeta, and finally at her baby daughter. "Look, little guy, you're cute and all, but that's my baby you're holding, and we've been hunting across 3 timelines for her." King Vegeta stepped forward, his red cape fanning out. "Silence, woman. How dare an unarmored female speak to the royal family with such?" Before King Vegeta could finish his sentence, Future Vegeta vanished in a blur of blinding speed. Swoosh. In a microsecond, Future Vegeta reappeared directly between young Vegeta and King Vegeta. Before either could react, Future Vegeta casually plucked baby Bulla out of young Vegeta's grip with one hand while delivering a swift, light chop to the young prince's collarbone with the other, dropping the 10-year-old to his knees, gasping for air. Bulla blinked, looked up at the familiar scarred face and spiky hair, and let out a joyful squeal, grabbing Future Vegeta's nose. "Dada," she cheered happily. Yes, quiet down, brat," Future Vegeta grunted, adjusting her in his arm, though a tiny smirk broke through his stern scowl. He looked down at his younger self, who was struggling to stand, panting heavily on the stone floor. "You're soft," Future Vegeta remarked coolly to his younger self. "Relying on raw power and tantrums. If you want to survive what Frieza has planned for this rock, you'd better start training harder." Young Vegeta looked up, clutching his shoulder, his dark eyes burning with equal parts humiliation and intense, burning ambition. What are you?" Future Vegeta turned his back, walking back toward Bulma and the time machine. "I am what you will become if you survive your own arrogance." Bulma looked down at young Vegeta, offering a sympathetic smile. "Thanks for babysitting, little prince. You actually did a pretty good job keeping her safe." She tossed a small capsule corp container toward him. "Here, a little souvenir from the future. Try not to blow yourselves up." Young Vegeta caught the capsule, staring at the sleek, futuristic logo stamped on its side. As Future Vegeta and Bulma stepped back into the time machine, the engine roared to life, crackling with temporal energy. Before the hatch sealed, Future Vegeta glanced back one last time at King Vegeta and his younger self. "Keep your eyes on the skies, kid," Future Vegeta called out over the roar of the temporal drive. "And don't trust the lizard." With a blinding flash of light and a thunderous boom, the time machine vanished, leaving the palace courtyard silent once more, save for the crackling fires of the destroyed scout ship. Young Vegeta stood up slowly, brushing the dust from his battle armor. He looked down at the tiny capsule in his palm, then up at the clear sky where the machine had been. "Frieza," young Vegeta muttered, his fists tightening until his knuckles turned white. He looked at his father, his eyes glowing with fierce, newfound determination. "Father, we need to move the planet's elites. Now." King Vegeta looked at his son, then at the sky, nodding slowly. Agreed. The timeline had changed. Planet Vegeta would not go down without a fight. Epilogue, back to the present. The temporal drive hummed softly as the ring-shaped time capsule settled onto the landing pad inside the Capsule Corporation courtyard. The glass canopy hissed open, exposing the warm, sunny air of West City. Bulma stepped out first, stretching her arms above her head with a deep sigh of relief. Home sweet home, no red skies, no flying rocks, and no cranky 10-year-old Saiyans. Vegeta followed close behind, holding baby Bulla casually in one arm. Bulla, completely unfazed by jumping 30 years into the future, was busy trying to gnaw on the golden strap of Vegeta's shoulder armor. TCH, that brat was unrefined, but he had spirit, Vegeta grunted, adjusting his grip as he stepped down onto the grass. Though I doubt my father will listen to a word he says about Frieza. Are you kidding? Bulma laughed, taking Bulla from his arms and nuzzling her cheek against the baby's soft turquoise hair. You saw the look on King Vegeta's face. You completely terrified them. I'll bet the past is already shifting into a whole new timeline. Bulla squirmed happily in Bulma's arms, letting out a cheerful babble before yawning loudly. Dada, Bulla chirped, reaching out one chubby hand toward Vegeta. Vegeta stopped in his tracks, crossing his arms and looking away with a scowl, though his tail twitched slightly behind him, a clear sign of amusement. Don't look at me like that, brat. I am not carrying you around for the rest of the day. You've caused enough temporal paradoxes for one afternoon. Oh, hush, big guy, Bulma smiled, kissing Bulla's forehead. You were secretly loving every second of playing protector back there. Vegeta turned toward the gravity chamber, his boots clicking against the pavement. Nonsense. I was merely preserving my own future bloodline. Now if you'll excuse me, seeing my 10-year-old self remind me how much weak energy I used to waste. I have training to do. As Vegeta vanished inside the metal dome of the gravity chamber, Bulma looked down at Bulla, who was now fast asleep against her shoulder. Come on, little time traveler, Bulma whispered gently, walking toward the house. Let's get you a real bottle, and keep you far away from any more time machines.